And so literally it was just, what is the sound guy doing? And like, here's the thing. There's not one sound guy, right? Like there's never just one sound guy, but everyone assumes it's just one sound guy. And so I relate this because you don't get the credit, but because no one has any fucking, like if you're not in broadcast, you don't have a goddamn fucking clue how it's being ran. So yes, I might get shit on, but I'm not really getting shit on because no one actually knows how it works.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Minds of Media. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and today's guest is an observer, director, and now production specialist who has worked for many different tournament organizers, including Epic Games and Activision Blizzard, and more. Please let me introduce Daniel Tompos, maybe better known as Just Imagine. It was close, but not there. It was so close. It was so close. It was so close. I wanted to get it, but it wasn't quite there. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Woke up not long ago, so still getting that rust off.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we're good.
That's good. That's good. It's lovely to have you here. I'm really excited. I don't always get to interview people who are doing a lot of the behind the scenes. And I don't think people get to see the behind the scenes and what it means and how actually crucially important it is for kind of everything that happens, like this esports that we love or production in general that we love, whether it's content creation. You're the person behind there who plays a large role in making sure everything happens. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like to see an owl broadcast without some... Oh, wait, that was like season 2, Overwatch League, wasn't it? I saw your tweets.
Yeah.
Your tweets.
There was that. Look, there was some salt there. I'm not gonna lie.
a little bit. So it's gonna be very interesting. We'll start off with the easier stuff before we get into the harder questions. Though I will say that lead up was pretty good. One of the things about you, if people follow you, is that you're really into cooking. In fact, it's actually kind of awful to look through your Twitter sometimes because I'm normally trying to diet and I'm like looking through that and I'm like, oh God, do I want to eat that? That looks so delicious. Why can I not eat that? So you're really into cooking. What's your favorite thing to cook? And, why do you love cooking so much?
It's I love the concept of making something from nothing, which is probably partially why I love broadcasts as well.
Yeah.
I when I was younger, I ended up working at a couple of restaurants because that's what you do. And so I realized I never want to do cooking as a job because fuck that. Like, I don't want to learn like sauces, but when you work in a restaurant, you inevitably figure out like this flavor works with this flavor. Yeah. And it's also like somewhat like a mad chemistry, like science experiment. Let me take this and this and put it together. And sometimes it turns out good. Sometimes it doesn't. So I love the kind of notion that you can experiment with that. And I love food and I love delicious things. And if I can make it at home, that's great. As for the kind of stuff that I like to cook, I mean, it's everything. Like if you look at it, a lot of it ends up being kind of more Asian inspired, I guess, just because I love Asian food. I grew up with Thai food and stuff like that. I can't ever fully recreate shit like that because it's difficult to make because honestly, you cannot get most of the ingredients that you need for that out here. But, making like stir fries and fried rice and, I love some like, I really have like an affinity for, do you know what gochujang is?
It sounds very familiar and I feel like I've heard of it, but I don't know if I've had it. I feel like when I lived in LA, I had, because we had a Korean cook. I'm pretty sure she might have mentioned something very similar.
Yeah, so it's this like chili paste type spice. Yep. And you mix it in with a bunch of stuff and I love it. Like I love wings and I found this recipe for a gochujang wings and it is actually just fucking amazing. So yeah.
Your wings, do you like them fried or baked?
So I used to do fried, and I do like them fried. The problem is that the cleanup associated with frying is way harder because you got to figure out what to do with all the oil. Yeah. So it's way harder. So I've been baking most of it lately. especially the gochujang one, you actually marinate it. So frying it wouldn't work anyway.
Okay.
So in that case, you just bake it because you actually want that like slight char on it if you get it from broiling it to make it flavorful. But yeah, so usually going for the baking purposes.
Okay. Normally I don't like bake, but that actually sounds good. And that makes sense with the charring factor there. Some of the things about you that I would like to kind of delve into is like, who is Daniel as a person? Like a lot of people might know you as your online name, Just Imagine. I kind of like knew you as Daniel because I'm pretty sure Alchemist might have mentioned you before a couple times actually for like my show. Like I've been meaning to get you on here for a while, so I'm happy we got you on here. But like, where did you grow up?
So I was actually I'm Hungarian by birth. So I moved to the U.S. when I was 9.
What language is it? Hungarian? It's Hungarian. Okay, yeah. And I didn't want to be wrong there. Do you speak Hungarian?
Yeah,
fluently.
It's more or less.
Okay.
I've been not in Hungary for 28 years.
Yeah.
So it's a little, you forget a lot, and I still talk in Hungarian with my parents and sisters. But, you start forgetting, like I wouldn't be able to write it very well. I can still read it fairly well, but writing it is like, I literally have to sound it out and like,
yeah.
The one good thing about the Hungarian language is that all the words, when you say it, it's written as that. So there's no weird, like it's one of the harder things to learn about English is that like the word no.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mean N-O? Do you mean N-O like
K-N-O-W
or right? Yeah. Like N-O-W, K-N-O-W, like that's why it's so hard to learn it for a lot of people who are not English speakers, because when you're writing out something in Hungarian, you just sound it out and you write out the letters, and that's the word.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's Americans who can't spell English either, so.
There's also 44 letters in the Hungarian alphabet, so it's a little bit more complex. But yeah, so I still more or less speak Hungarian fluently, but I feel like every day I get a little bit worse at it. So so I moved here from there, grew up in San Francisco Bay Area for the most part, went to school in San Jose State.
Yeah,
I studied radio, television, film.
So are you your first generation then, right? You would be right first generation from.
No, I wouldn't even be first generation because I was.
So it's your kids.
I'm
that's right. Okay, yeah.
So if I had kids, they'd be first generation.
Okay. So why did your parents end up deciding to move over to the States?
All right. So let me give you a little bit of fun family history.
I'm excited.
So, we moved out here because my stepdad had moved out here in the 80s to go to school at San Francisco State.
Okay.
My stepdad used to be married to my aunt. So, all right. So my mom and my biological dad split when I was like 3 months old.
Okay.
I have an older sister who was with them, and I have a younger sister who's a half sister between my stepdad and my mom.
Okay.
So my stepdad and my aunt moved out to California in like 80s to go to school, and they worked here. And then they moved back for a little bit. And then, so my stepdad and my mom got together at that point, but my stepdad had already kind of built a life out here. So we just followed.
Wow. That is, Are family reunions a little bit weird ever? Because I feel like,
I mean, we don't really have family reunions. Okay. Like my aunt ended up living in Berkeley as well. Like, from what I understand, it was an amicable split between my stepdad and my aunt. They just realized that it wasn't going to happen. They didn't have any kids, so he kept it in the family, I guess.
Yeah, that.
but yeah, so
okay, interesting. So what did you mentioned your parents went to college out there? What did your parents do for a living?
So my stepdad, my mom didn't. She had. So I want to say in Hungary she had studied. something with biology or like plants or something like that, but she never really talks about it because that's not what she ended up doing at all. She had a lot of different jobs. I think when we moved out here, she was doing back in Hungary. She was a single mom raising 3 kids, with the help of my grandmother, of course. But so like one of the biggest things that she was doing there was dyeing clothes.
Wow.
Like she was literally a clothing dyer. So like our washing machines were constantly filled up with dyeing solution. Out here, though, my stepdad, he did construction, and then he ended up being a teacher for a long time, math teacher specifically. Really? So he was a big mathematics guy. He does income tax stuff now. He's been doing that for he has his own income tax like business. And my mom turned into masseuse. And they ended up owning a hot tub / sauna place in Berkeley, which ended up getting shut down because they had an electrical fire, and the landlord used that as an excuse to boot them out of the building. So
Jesus.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's some interesting like family history there. So growing up, what was it like growing up in the Bay Area for you?
And look, it's in terms of specifically, I grew up in Berkeley.
Okay.
And I don't know how many people know Berkeley, but it is by far one of the most liberal places in the entire world. Very diverse. Bay Area had I got exposed to basically all the cultures. I went to a huge high school. My high school had 4,200 people in it at some point. My graduating class alone was 900 kids.
That's so many.
And so it was, you learned everything about every culture there. I feel very lucky because of that. I mean, back to the food part, every fucking kind of food that you would ever find in the world, you could find there. So all of that was great. Side note, Berkeley, back in before times of pot being illegal everywhere, Berkeley had a city ordinance, I think it was, that if you were a minor and you were caught with a small amount of pot, nothing that could be considered trafficking, you literally they couldn't take you to jail. The most they could do was confiscate it and tell your parents. And the reason why this happened is because in the 60s, kids were getting arrested left and right for pot. And it was just we're filling up our jails because we have youth with pot. So it's not like I was ever a stoner, really. I enjoyed it a few times because that's what happens. Yeah. But my point is that's the kind of environment
that's pretty cool, though.
Very liberal, very hippie type.
Yeah,
of
that's good. Now, just an odd thing, and we're definitely going to talk about him definitely more on later on. But Ben Goldhaber, I believe, is also from the Bay Area, and I feel like he said Berkeley. I'm trying to make sure I didn't mix up. Did you?
He may have lived in Berkeley. I know because. All right, so I don't know where he's from originally, but Twitch is in San Francisco, and a lot of people commute because San Francisco is you don't ever don't live in San Francisco, y'all. Unless you're a millionaire, you don't want to live there. So a lot of people take BART into the city, just the local subway system. So I wouldn't be surprised if he lived there at some point. By the time I met him, though, I was living in San Jose. Okay. So I lived in Berkeley, grew up there. But in 2004, 5, I went to college to San Jose State. Yeah. And so I ended up living in San Jose for about a decade.
Yeah, that makes sense. So obviously you ended up going for something, it seems very similar to the career path you went on to, but kind of growing up, was that always your passion? Was broadcast, doing entertainment? Was that kind of the stuff that was your passion going into college?
So here, I had no plan and I had no
I relate to that.
Vision, and I had no idea. I always thought I was going to end up doing computer stuff because I was decently good at it. Mm-hmm. I during high school, I had a job doing IT and database stuff for a nonprofit. And that was always kind of just like, well, I guess I'll do that. So the interesting thing that happened, though, and probably where I got to enjoy that atmosphere. So my older sister, my older sister is 5 years older than me, and my younger sister is 5 years younger than me.
Okay.
So we never actually ended up going to we're never in high school together, which is interesting. But so basically my older sister had, I don't know why, but she had gotten into doing backstage theater stuff at the high school.
Okay.
And so because of that, we as a family knew about that, and we would go see plays that she was doing stuff for, or she was stage managing or something like that. Mm-hmm. So when I was in the 8th grade, we're putting on a play. I want to say it was The Tempest. Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember it completely. I think it was The Tempest. And so I went there and I was like, well, I've been hearing my sister do all this stuff and that sounds kind of fun. So is there something that I could do that's like that for this play? And that involved literally, so it was a broken down theater. None of the light systems worked.
Oh God.
So literally my first exposure to backstage theater was we had 3 lights in the balcony, and it was literally, I had surge protectors that I had to flick on and off to turn them on and off. Mm-hmm. That was it. So that was kind of how that started. And then when I got into high school, I just joined up. And so for all 4 years of high school, I was doing backstage theater stuff. And that meant set changes. I was doing patch management, which is so for those of you who don't know, the way that a lot of the lights work is in theaters is you have in the ceiling little outlets, and then you plug lights into that. And then backstage, you have what is called the patch, where you have to then go, okay, that thing, number 40, whatever, in the ceiling, you take a cable and you patch it into here, and that signal gets sent up to the light booth.
Yeah. And
so there were shows where half of our patch was broken, so we literally have to live patch cables in the middle of the show.
God.
So there was a couple of times when we just needed extra lights, and so somebody needed to be there, be okay, on this cue, we need to literally do this, and had my fair share of getting zapped by electricity. Ask you,
did you ever get electrocuted? Because this sounds like a huge safety hazard. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, especially when you have a patch that's falling apart and the pins are coming out of the back, and you have to hammer it back in. Yeah, it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, I won't lie. That sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen nowadays.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I earned the name Frosty the Patchman because at that point I was drinking Gatorade Frosts a lot, so I became Frosty the Patchman.
There are worse nicknames.
It wasn't going to be something that stuck, but it was just funny for that time.
It was good. It's a good name. I think we should bring it back.
But then I ended up doing actual lighting. I ran Lightboard for about 2.5 years. And that was every play that we did, every dance show that we did, some other live events that we did. So that's probably where I got that bug. Here's the thing though. Yeah. Sorry. Go
ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is doing backstage theater as a job, it is incredibly, you think broadcast is hard to break into. Doing theater jobs is impossible to break into.
Really?
It is, because it's such a small, to make money into it.
Yeah.
Right? You can always volunteer at your local community theater, but to make money off of it, you're working for pennies at best. It was yes, I like it, but I don't see how I'm going to break into it. Mm-hmm. And so let me maybe go with doing computer stuff more, because I don't know how I would do this. I had one chance right after high school to be able to do theatery stuff. And what it was is, so the nonprofit I was working at, the HR person that really liked me, and she had like a cousin or some family member who worked for a company that got hired by cruise ships to run all their theater stuff. And so I was like set to go. Basically, like it was just like, okay, as soon as you graduate, we'll get you papers and sign it. About a month and a half before I graduated high school, the main cruise ship that they worked on burned down. And I'm not like, it literally had to get decommissioned because like there was a huge electrical fire on board and it just couldn't use it anymore.
God.
And so the company like fell on hard times. Like they started to have to do, like they had to cut staff, and it was just like, well, all right, guess that's not happening. And so then I kind of just, I ended up going to a technical school to do electrical engineering. So I have a associate's degree in that. I graduated from there in 2002. And you want to know what happened in 2002?
What?
The stock market died in 2002.
Oh, that's right. It did.
That's when the big one of those big crashes happened. And what that meant is every electrical engineering job that you could break into, there was suddenly an influx of 15 people with 15 years more experience than I had, who were willing to suddenly work for a lot less than they would be getting paid.
Interesting.
So,
okay. I mean, that brings up me a lot of questions. I actually thought you were closer to my age. You're not. Not saying that you're old.
Nobody will. Like, okay, if you look at me.
Like now I know. I think I have a pretty close guess now based on what you told me. Because that would put you, let's say 18, 19. Oh God, math is hard. Hang on, we'll do this in a bit, but I think I know because I
doing math on stream.
Yeah,
sucker.
I have a psych degree. I do not have any sort of like. There's a reason I went for psychology. But I thought you would have been 5 years older than me. It is in fact a little bit more than that. But it's very easy to figure out now because you gave me crucial dates based on this. I just have to actually do math because I'm 28. But yeah, that's interesting though. I didn't realize that you had an electrical engineering associate's. The only thing that I knew about was the fact that you had went back to school for radio and television, which is very interesting. And that was in 2005 when you kind of decided to go back to school. So going for electrical engineering, what made you want to do that? Like, that's such a weird, like, I understand working with computers and I could see maybe doing the EE for that. But that just seems so far away from, was it you had given up on doing theater production? Was that basically like, this is never going to happen anymore?
Yeah, I mean, after high school and after that thing fell through, it was just like, I wouldn't even know where to start. So out of high school, I was done with school, right? Like my last year and a half of high school was just this downward spiral of me cutting classes. And I still finished with like a 3.1 GPA, which is not bad, right?
Why were you cutting classes all the time?
I didn't care. I literally stopped caring. And I would love to tell you why. It just, everything disinterested me. Right. And I still went to classes. I still attended most of them, but I cut a lot. So I cut very specific classes. I failed my, so
you can swear on this show, by the way.
No, so it's funny. So there was a class called math analysis, which is essentially trigonometry.
Yeah.
But because it was called math analysis, when it was put on as like the code for the class, it was literally anal math.
Oh God.
Incredibly true, by the way. That is absolutely anal. And it was just like so I don't do well with repetition. And it's why I could never program. Because I'm not bad at math.
Yeah.
I fall asleep doing math because when you're doing a math homework assignment, it's just literally doing the same problem over and over and over and over and over again. And I can't do it. Like and so I stopped going to that class because I'm like, I don't want to do the homework because I can't do it. And I am just about to fail this. And that was a fun conversation that I had to have with my parents where I sat them down. I'm like, listen, I'm going to fail this class. it's not going to affect my graduation, but I'm just letting you know right now, there's no chance of me salvaging any sort of passing grade out of this.
How did they take that?
I mean, I guess they were just like, well, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. So I don't remember really what happened from there. You know, we tried to see if there's anything like I could possibly do, but thankfully, as I said, it was not anything I needed to graduate. So it wasn't going to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It was going to be a huge hit to my GPA. But so, yeah, it was just one of those things where I didn't want to go to school anymore because I was just done with it. And literally the only reason I ended up going, so I went to Healed, which I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've not.
But it's kind of, have you heard of like DeVry?
That sounds kind of familiar, but.
So there are all these it's basically like 2-year courses and you just get an associate's degree in whatever you take. So it's a trade school, vocational school. And so I went there because it was like, okay, so this is going to be hyper focused on just whatever I want to take.
Yeah.
It's going to be 2 years and I'm going to get a degree and and they have they're able to do job stuff. And the cool thing is if I still wanted to, their thing is like, okay, if you ever went there, you can at any point go back and take that same class over again later on in your life.
That's kind of cool.
For free.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. So, there's that. And so the reason why I did electronics instead of computer science, because it was basically like the two things that you could do. And I think there was like maybe a networking thing but I for some reason I didn't do that, which maybe I should have, because that would have been better. But so, Healed closed down.
Yeah. Unlucky.
With my alma mater.
So much for getting those classes in.
Oh, shucks. But anyway, so they had computer science and electronics engineering. Computer science is a lot of programming. Programming is a lot of repetition.
Yep.
And I'd taken programming classes in high school and I knew I wasn't going to enjoy it. So I went to electrical engineering.
I also did not enjoy our programming. I think the same reason. I think it was just too much repetition.
I wish I did. I wish I could sit down and learn fucking coding, because I could do it and make $150,000 a year easy.
That's true.
Now.
Yeah, that would have been a lot better probably, as far as like monetary wise. Like, I mean, you kind of.
I wish I enjoyed it, and I wish I had the kind of brain that worked with it.
No, instead you wanted to go into an industry that you had to freelance and contract all the time, so you could perpetually feel anxiety about whether or not you have a job in 6 months.
We did this to ourselves.
I know, right? You know what's funny is even when I started out in mental health. And working there, but I contracted in mental health too. So it wasn't like when I came to esports, it was suddenly doing it. I was doing contracting before esports, and I was like, my first contract was like, oh, I've seen these things, and I actually went through it, and I was like, these are the things that I don't want in here, because I know from being screwed on other deals and things. And I was like, okay, well, this is basically the same thing, but it's awful. I don't recommend contracting really if you don't have to for anyone. It's really a lot of anxiety-inducing problems.
I mean, I value stability a hell of a lot, and esports is anything but that.
Yeah, I don't think it's stable anywhere either. Like, I think if people think that it's stable in any one part of esports, I really don't think it is. I'm trying to think of like broadcast, it isn't. The talent side, it isn't. Behind the scenes, we've proven it isn't. If anything, like even journalism right now, you see how many publications just randomly close or start up. Like I don't think any of it is stable in esports, which is unfortunate. And I wish it would do better so it could become stable, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Especially with everything like recently kind of going on. Which has been kind of a nightmare with all of that. So,
so one thing I will say though is broadcast is a drug.
Yeah,
like you literally get a high from it.
Yeah,
and it's a high you cannot get anywhere else. Interestingly, the only other place that I've ever worked at that gives the same kind of general feeling of broadcast are kitchens.
Really? I guess it makes sense. Like they can be pretty.
It is shocking how similar the two work. How you have this incredibly high pressure. You have to have everyone working on the same page because shit needs to get done, and shit needs to get done immediately. Yep. And if any part of that chain breaks down, everybody's fucked.
Yeah.
But the thing is, once you get that taste of broadcast, and if you enjoy it, nothing can replace it. And you will spend the rest of your life craving it. And I mean, that's what happened to me, right? Like I did radio, television, film, as I said, for my work, for school. And, I did that ended up being a 5-year degree. So I didn't know that I wanted to do it, by the way. I didn't go into schooling with that.
Yeah.
I spent 2 years, a year and a half, just taking random courses, just trying to figure out what the fuck I wanted to do. I literally went back to school because I've been working at a LAN cafe for 2 years, and I decided I should probably do something with my life.
So is that what happened? Like when the market crashed, you basically tried to find any job that you could, and you just worked it up until you decided to go to school?
Yeah. So essentially, and I had done a couple of IT internships for the city of Berkeley, but it wasn't like a full job. It was just like a summer thing. And essentially what happened is, all right, so the way I got this job is I broke my middle finger. We used to play flag football. I enjoy sports. I'm one of those few unicorns who both enjoys sports and esports.
Yeah.
And so I used to play like basketball and baseball and flag football. And so one day we're playing flag football and I go to catch a pass and the football just literally just this finger.
Ooh.
And I thought it was just a jammed finger. Turns out 40% of this joint was broken off and they put a pin right there and a pin right there to squeeze these two together. And I had that in my middle finger on my right hand for 3 months. I was trying to find a job at this point, including places like Cold Stone Creamery, who decided they don't want to hire me when I have an immobile middle finger on my right hand. But what was going on is some old high school friends of mine were helping start to open this game store. So it was board games, card games / internet cafe. And so they needed help to move stuff in on their opening. I'd applied there, but like I hadn't really like applied there. Like it was just I sent an application, but I didn't really fill it out because I didn't think that I was going to get hired. But after I went in with a broken middle finger to help move 400-pound cases, I was like, "Hey, are you guys hiring?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And then I got hired. Minimum wage job, but it was a job, and it was in a game store, and that was about as good as it got. Like I got free internet time and we played. So, I worked there. It was called Eudaimonia in Berkeley. It is still open if anybody ever goes there.
That's actually impressive. Like if it's still open, like a lot of those places ended up closing down because they couldn't handle it.
Well, to be fair, I think they're still open. I have no idea what happened with them.
That's true. Your college, you just found out your college is closed too. So.
Yeah.
Well,
as far as I know, they were still open. I don't know what happened during them with COVID. I hope they're still functioning. But so that's where it worked. But yeah, around 2005, I was like, I'd taken community college classes still just to fulfill like some of those early requirements. So I didn't have to take like English 1A and 1B and all those like lab classes. And I was glad that I did because it was super fucking easy in community college. And when I got back to school, it turns out that like if you were to do those same classes in an actual college, it is way more fucking work. So I'm just glad I got it out of the way.
Also more expensive.
Yeah. Yep. And so I had no idea, but I went in as a physics major because because I actually liked physics. Okay. I had a really cool physics teacher in high school and I really enjoyed it. And then I went to my first physics class in state school, and I quickly realized that it was just math, a lot of math. Yep. And I realized I don't want to do a lot of math. And so I quickly was not a physics major anymore. And then I was just like, well, what am I going to do now? And so I took classes from random places. Like I was taking later classes. I liked writing. I ended up being a creative writing minor. Maybe I do an MFA. I was doing like some technical courses. I was looking at computer science. And then randomly, I took the entry-level intro to radio, television, film. And immediately, like first week, I was like, yep, this is it.
Really?
This is what I want to do.
So did you ever think about being more in the spotlight, because I mean, I can imagine doing a lot of entertainment or broadcast. The traditional job you think of is like a radio DJ. Like that would be kind of the more traditional. Was that something you're ever interested? Is that like being more in the front in the spotlight?
Not really. I mean, I gotta be honest. I don't like my sound of my voice, and I don't like the look of my face. And so like I have a lot of teeth whenever I smile. And so part of that was like the self-consciousness. Part of it was just like, I have a face meant for radio, that sort of deal, I could do that, but I stumble over my words too much, which is why I could never, I entertained some notions of broadcasting. Like I did casting for StarCraft a little bit.
Really?
I did. All right. How much research on me did you do?
A decent amount. Like it depends on asking me a question. Like some of it, I do a lot.
Guns of Icarus come up in your search history?
Did not.
You should have gone. You could have gone. Did you ever go to my YouTube page?
I feel like I might have briefly looked at it, but I don't know. I don't think I did.
No worries. I'm not calling you.
I feel like I'm being called out here. Wow.
No, I'm just curious because you were actually like, oh yeah, I looked up a lot about you, but I couldn't find much. So, I will say
I went through every single tweet that you've ever tweeted that is available on your Twitter.
That's fair. This was from like 2005. No, like maybe 2012, 13 through like 15. There's a game called Guns of Icarus Online, which is a steampunk style airship to airship battle game.
Okay.
Where you have 4 people on a boat and you have to fly around and shoot down other boats, airships. I was doing casting for that because I was one of the only few people who were. Now, it wasn't a big game. If we had double-digit viewers, that was a great day. But I did that for like a few years. But still, like, I whenever I do casting, and most recently, I'm doing some casting for a 24-year-old Neo Geo golf game.
Interesting.
That has a very small niche community that has been doing tournaments. And so because, when you work tangentially next to people who are doing broadcasting, you see what works and what doesn't. Yeah. You kind of pick up on it. So I've been doing that. Do I ever think that I would be good enough to do it in an actual game? Probably not. And the part of that is I'm not particularly great at a lot of these bigger titles. Like I was never a top level Overwatch player.
Yeah.
Right. And that stigma, especially for casting, is huge. Like if you're not borderline pro as a broadcaster, people will fucking shit on you.
Wait. I know for Overwatch, there was a lot of the casters that weren't pro. I mean, they got some shit, but eventually people kind of warmed up to them.
And you know why Monty got a bunch of shit all the time is because he was like a silver to gold level player.
Yeah. But eventually people warmed up to him. I don't think he was... wait. Let's use League of Legends there for a minute, okay? Because he was definitely not super high tier in League of Legends from what I remember. I want to say he was maybe platinum. Maybe he was diamond, but he was considered the best, like arguably the best.
Look, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's bullshit. Yeah. It is absolutely bullshit because you like it helps to be a high level player, sure.
Yes.
It won't make or break you.
That's true.
Right? Like being a high level player and then being a caster for it, you can absolutely bring something to the table that other people can't.
That's
absolutely.
True. Yeah.
Should it be required? No. And it's been proven time and time again that you don't need it. But that stigma still exists.
That's true.
And so when I went into Overwatch, I eventually was thinking, do I want to try casting in this?
Would you have done color casting then? Is that what your prefer?
Probably, probably play by play, because I just wouldn't have the analysis part down. But we'll get to the Overwatch part later. Anyway, so to answer your question, I never really wanted to be in front of the camera. I enjoyed the behind the camera feel way more than being in front of the camera. would it be super cool to be famous and, you know, get invited to a bunch of parties and, you know, never, you know, be a famous, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll say the same word for the fourth time. So I'm not a broadcaster. So, you know, would that be cool? Yeah, probably. But that thing that happens backstage, that's what I want. That feeds me, right? Like, that's what satiates my soul.
I can 100% see that. And broadcast is, I used to play music actually. So the first time that I played a rock and roll concert, like jazz was a little bit, I never got the same feeling doing jazz. No offense to jazz. It just doesn't make me feel the same way when I play jazz compared to alternative rock or rock. But playing a concert, that was a feeling that ever since that day, I will always search for that feeling. Whatever that feeling was, I will try to find something that was similar. Working with competitive esports was very similar. There was definitely a similar feeling. But broadcast, I think, is probably what's going to be the closest. So I could totally understand that feeling. And I don't think I've done anything that has ever come close to that. So I 100% understand. One of the things I wanted to ask you, though, is being behind the scenes, you don't really get any of the credit either, but you do get a lot of the responsibility and a lot of the flack for anything that goes wrong. Like if something's happening wrong on broadcast, it's either the casters, it's like a 50-50 toss up between whether or not they're going to shit on the casters or it's everyone behind the scenes, but you never really get any of the credit. Doesn't that get hard?
So yes and no. Do you know the meme of the NASL sound guy, right?
I don't think I do. I also don't understand memes. Like, it's hilariously funny how much I cannot understand memes. Like, you understand memes way more than I will. I don't know why. My head just cannot grasp them.
Well, I was just wondering, because it still comes up from time to time in esports. Man, essentially what happened is, so StarCraft is one of my favorite esports of all time.
Yeah.
It's what got me into esports, actually.
That was before my time.
And so, yeah, so what happened is there was the North American StarCraft League, and I think it was like produced by EG or something like that. And so the first week that was on, it came out as it was like, okay, we're going to try this in North, because everything was Korea in StarCraft. And so this was the first like big attempt to do it in North America. And the audio was fucked up for like the first broadcast and for at least half of the broadcast. Ooh. And so literally it was just, what is the sound guy doing? And like, here's the thing. There's not one sound guy, right? Like there's never just one sound guy, but everyone assumes it's just one sound guy. And so I relate this because you don't get the credit, but because no one has any fucking, like if you're not in broadcast, you don't have a goddamn fucking clue how it's being ran. So yes, I might get shit on, but I'm not really getting shit on because no one actually knows how it works.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yes, it's frustrating because you want to be like, you guys don't actually understand what's going on back there and why this isn't working. And I would love it to explain it to you, but I don't have the fucking time because I'm trying to fix the goddamn thing. But I never really found that to be much of an issue. I think I took a little bit more offense to it when it was like shitting on observers because that was a little bit more personal. But you know, it's just like, I guess it's partially you get kind of desensitized to it. And partially it's just because no one who's trying to blame anyone ever has any idea what they're supposed to be blaming. So it immediately is get discounted because no one's going to be like, oh, the A1 isn't patching the correct microphone. Like no one's going to say that because nobody has any fucking clue. Everyone, it's just the NASL sound guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So when did you first start you mentioned StarCraft was one of your early games. When did you start to think, you know what, maybe I want to work in esports? Where does that kind of come in where you're thinking this is what I want to do? So
one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't know that esports really existed until about 2010, 11 with StarCraft 2. Because I'm old enough to answer your question, by the way, I'm 37.
I was going to say 38, but
coming up on that. No one ever guesses it because everyone thinks I look like I'm 25.
You do look very young. You look very young.
Obviously, I'm going to live forever. I don't age. Yeah. I could have been there when Jason and Scott started.
Yes.
Easily. In that 2000, I graduated high school at 2001. If I would have stuck with looking at broadcasts and looking at video games, I always loved video games. I could have been in there easily at the start. Now, would I have been because I wasn't a big Counter-Strike person or shooters fan, really? I don't know. But StarCraft was also around at that point. Yeah. So and I always loved StarCraft. So, I that is one of those things where like, fuck, I wish I knew because I could have been in that OG club. Would I have been? I don't know. I don't know if I would have actually been able to get into it, but I would have had the chance to be in it if I would have known it existed.
Okay, maybe this is a hot take. I feel like anyone who made it into esports, like later on, I feel like if they would have been there at the beginning, they also would have made it. If only because I think it was harder as things got more solidified. Whereas people, I think early on were a lot more willing to, because you had to basically still work for free, but a lot like there wasn't as much people trying to work for free. And maybe we can have a conversation about working for free too, because I think it would be an interesting conversation. Sure. But back then, like it wasn't like there was a ton of people. Now it's just like almost oversaturated as with people who are willing. It's like when I broke into the scene, it was very, very difficult. For me, I like went and got a side degree and I worked a job and I was doing that. I was like, eventually I will transition and I will do whatever free work I can and then I will transition.
Pretty much same here.
Yeah. But I feel like early on some of the stories that I've heard from both like Alchemist or SirScoots or any of the really older people, it seemed like it was a lot more of a community that was just open as long as you were willing to put in the work. And so I feel like it would have been easier because I think YouTube was the same way. Like people who started getting into like content creation who did it early had an easier time than people who do it now. So I think you could have made it 100%.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's, well, I mean, we'll never know.
That's true. Can't go back in time.
Well, I wish I would have known about it. I didn't, I could have easily been in there, especially because at that time I would have been in college in broadcast.
Yep.
And so I could have brought a lot of that knowledge in already. Yep. Knowing how to, set up lighting, how to frame stuff, how to work cameras, all that. Like I more or less knew, right? So I had that. I would have had that leg up on people who were just figuring out how to do it on the fly. Mm-hmm. I knew I was doing video editing at that time already. So, there was a lot of things that I could have done if I had known. I didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I graduated college in 2011. My diploma is signed by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Fancy.
Because he was the governor of California.
Yeah, he was. That's fancy. Do you have that framed now, if only because he signed it?
I have it framed solely. So this is kind of pertinent to everything as well. But during school, I was working work study at a department as an IT person. Mm-hmm. And as my graduation gift, they gave me this like fancy wooden frame. So I still have it.
Those frames are expensive. Yeah, they're very expensive.
Otherwise it would be in the filing cabinet somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I graduated around then, and I tried to do work in movies, and I worked at like I worked at a movie. I worked for a Spanish-speaking soap opera that was being filmed in the Bay Area.
You say try. Does that mean that you lost interest in it? That you didn't like it that much?
No. It was like, so the thing is like, that's very gig economy as well, where if you're working a movie, you're working maybe 25 days and the movie gets shot and you're done. The TV show that I worked on for 3 months, and then they fired everyone because they fired the executive producer, and by proxy, everyone under him got fired. So like and then it was just kind of like, I did not want to move to Los Angeles.
Why?
I hate Los Angeles. I fucking hate LA. I hated being there.
And one hell of an industry to want to be in.
I'm well aware of this. I'm just saying I tried all my life to not move to Los Angeles. But the problem was that maybe it was just a risk aversion. I just didn't, anyway, the point here is that that work never came together for me. And then I was floating around different jobs, doing like a few gigs every now and then. And during that time, I was luckily being able to live with a couple of friends of mine, brothers. And while I was trying to find a job or doing just gigs here and there, because I was basically living there rent free, like I would help them with food and everything. But, like I didn't have to pay rent, which was great. I slept on their basically a living room couch for a while. The reason why this is important is because what happened with there is GSL started up and our days became, go to work, come home, watch 6 to 8 hours of the previous day's GSL, sleep, and repeat. Yep. And that was what we did. And that was when, I always loved StarCraft, as I said, and, watching, especially Artosis and Tasteless do the commentating on that. They were super good, super cool. And that's when it was like, oh man, I love this. Esports is awesome. This is so super cool. And then that's where I learned about observers. I had never thought of that before. Yeah. I was just like, oh shit, that's a thing I could do. But I never, at that point, I was still not doing any sort of job for that. But that's when the esports big bug hit me in terms of at least watching. And that's what, got me onto Twitch, because from StarCraft, I started watching Day 9, and Day 9 was on Twitch. And so that got me into watching Twitch, and then, doing some of my own broadcasts, like early days of Twitch and everything too. But that's when like the esports thing was like, oh, this is actually super cool. And it's a game that I really like. So, awesome. So yeah, that's when the esports bug kind of hit me.
Okay, so you get this bug. What is your game plan? Like, I think this is kind of important when we talk about getting into esports. Like, what was your thought process of how am I going to make it? Did you have any sort of thoughts like that? I know I did.
So at that point, I hadn't crossed the path yet where I was like, esports is super cool and I want to work in it. And esports is super cool and I want to work in the broadcast side of it. The only thought I ever had in it was observing sounds kind of neat. And it's a thing that I could probably do. And that was just, I think that got in my mind of like, it is a thing I could do. But at that point, it wasn't just like, this is a thing I want to do right now. It was just like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
But at that point, I still hadn't made that connection of like, because it was Korea, right? Like that, it was just GSL and there was nothing else. Like, and I'm not going to Korea because, I wasn't, I wasn't a brew war guy or anything. So that wasn't going to happen. And the point at which that all intersected. And so, as I had said, I'd gone to San Jose State. I'd worked as a work study person doing IT.
Yeah.
And about a year after I graduated, still not having a job, the office that I worked at, my old boss called me up and said, hey, we haven't been able to find anyone to replace you for doing this IT work. Do you want a full-time job here? It's a better business decision for me to do this than to keep on hiring students who don't know what the fuck they're doing. Okay. And I was like, well, when am I moving? Because I needed a job.
Yeah.
And so that became my job for the next 8 years. I was doing IT work for San Jose State University. Now, the important part about this is San Jose State University has a very robust esports club.
Yes.
I don't think that existed when I was going there. And maybe it's just started up when I left. Mm-hmm. But what happened is I was walking around on campus on one of the years that I had started, and I saw a advertisement for their esports club, specifically referring to the CSL, the Collegiate Star League. Mm-hmm. So I look up Collegiate Star League. I see that they're doing StarCraft. I message him, hey, I could do production stuff for you guys. Possibly,
yeah.
And so that's that was the point when those two intersected, where I was like, I have the equipment, because I was always a computer person. So I have the equipment to do it with. I love the game. I've never done it, but I think I can observe.
And they gave you a shot.
And they gave me a shot, and that was free work. Yeah. I wasn't getting paid for that. Nobody was getting paid for that at that point. And that's when it started. And I, in about 6 months, I was like the head of the StarCraft 2 broadcast division, because nobody else wanted to do it, and I was just like, I knew how to go about it the best. So that's when the true broadcast / esports part of me started getting going.
Okay.
That was the initial point there.
So let's take a quick side tangent into free work, because I think it's an important topic to talk about. I don't believe in working for free. And I don't think most people actually do work for free. And I think that that's the big difference, is because working for free assumes that you get no transactional value. And I don't believe in that. You should always get some sort of transactional value.
So the interesting part is, to me, at that point, I didn't think of it as work.
Yeah.
To me, this was a hobby, right? Like, I had a job, right? And I had a job. Now, the great thing about the job that I had is I went there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I left at 4 p.m. And that was it. There was no before or after. There was no work for me to take home. I wasn't on call. So I had 5 p.m. to midnight to do whatever the fuck I wanted.
Yeah. Most
of the time it was playing video games. So here's just a different thing now that I love doing. And I never, it was one of those things where it'd be fun to do this to get paid for it, but I don't need to get paid for it.
Yeah.
And so I just did it, right? I wasn't thinking oh man, of course, every now and then you're like, dude, I wish I was getting paid for this. That'd be great if I was getting paid for it. But I didn't for me, it was literally just man, I love doing this. I just want to do it. I'm paying my bills already. I don't fucking care. At least I feel like I'm doing something constructive.
Yeah.
Something I love to do anyway. So there's a fine line between that. And the thing is, I didn't think of this as I'm going to use this to break into the scene. Right.
Yeah.
Because I spent so much time hoping that something would come together, like the cruise ship thing, or whatever, TV or TV show film thing, that it was just I can't rely on it happening, and I don't need it to happen, so I don't mind doing this for free, even though it would be cool if I was getting paid for it.
Yeah.
If I had no job and I was doing this, then maybe I would agree with you a bit more. But I think the time has changed with that a lot as well. In the early 2010s, nobody was getting paid, right? It just wasn't happening. Unless you were somehow able to get it to Korea and work there. Or if you were, doing some early Counter-Strike stuff, maybe, but everything else, nobody was getting paid. So it was just a different time. I don't think the notion of, here's the thing. I agree with you for the most part. I think, working for free is stupid. But my mindset at the time, combined with how that scene was at that time, it just never happened.
Yeah.
Now, what pissed me off is when I did end up trying to get into a few places that would pay something and it wouldn't be able to make a living off of.
Yeah.
After doing StarCraft for about a year and a half of being producer and observer and whatever, and doing some side casting, none of the places that paid some even gave me a call back when I contacted them. That's what got to me. I came into the CSL knowing it's a college program, right? Like it.
Yeah.
The chances of anyone making any money off of this is virtually nil. And so, I really didn't expect anything out of it. But the few places like I remember I believe it was Gosu Gamers and SCV Rush. I think they both had like some like, and it was literally going to be like, you get $50 for doing this one thing. Like, okay, at least it's something to show a little bit of value.
Yeah.
And they just never called me back. So that's and at that point, like if those places had been like, yeah, you can come work for us for free, I probably would have said, hey, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
But I was never under the illusion that I was going to and I should be making something from me where I'm starting out. Now, I also wasn't going to have this blind loyalty. And, I left CSL after about a year and a half for other reasons, not payment reasons. It was some kind of creative differences. And, working with a volunteer organization is hard because I take everything I do pretty seriously.
Yeah.
And that includes volunteer work.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't care if I'm doing this for free or if I'm doing it as a job. Well, maybe I care a little bit, but there's that core part of me where I'm like, I am going to do this as well as I fucking can. And I cannot function any other way.
Yeah.
And so when you're working with a volunteer organization and you're working with other people who are also doing it for free, but because they're doing it for free,
the expectations are
sometimes phoning it in, right? And, they don't show up for meetings or they're not responsive or, they just straight up stop showing up altogether. That's gonna happen in a volunteer organization, but it just pissed me the fuck off. And it was like, all right, listen, if you don't care, I'm not gonna be here because I can't do this. Like, I'm gonna just hate life.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think I would have a very similar. It's very hard to care when other people don't care. Like because your choices are why the fuck don't you care or why do I care? Like those are the only two options there, and it's pretty awful. Looking at esports now, what do you think people should do to try to break into the scene? I do believe in actually like working for zero monetary value, or like not necessarily for money. You should work for something, but it doesn't need to be money necessarily for me. But I also think it's important that you don't let people abuse the fact that a lot of people are very passionate about the industry. And I feel like that happens a lot. But I think that happens in entertainment in general, right? Like, I feel like theater, movie production, it's very common for people to be abused for something that they really find passionate. And I don't think that's uncommon. What do you think?
So there's the issue with esports is it is super oversaturated.
It is.
And look, whenever somebody asks me, hey, should I get into esports? I tell them no.
Me too. Yeah.
Because you won't make it. The chances of you making it is infinitesimally small. And by make it, I mean you are able to make a living off of it. It is like getting a Twitch partnership.
Yeah.
Getting to a partner is hard enough. Being able to make a full-time living off of it is nearly fucking impossible. And there are a million people in line trying to get there. So if you want a job that you're going to be able to make a stable living off of it, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And I told that myself. That was like after being done with StarCraft because nobody wanted to hire me, I was out. I was like, I can't focus on doing this because I'm not going to make an actual living off of it. Mm-hmm. I'll do little small things, but I can't do it. And so trying to get in it now. And the thing is, so it's weird because there are more resources now than ever to break into it, but that means it is accessible to everyone. And like, that makes it even harder. So are you still around now that I've told you to leave? Okay, now you can get started working.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the kind of deal it is. I wish I had an answer. Because I don't know.
I had Gio on, and I think I told Gio a very similar thing. Is I actually don't like that question generally, and it's kind of a baity question for you too, because it's a terrible question. I'm going to be very real, because the real answer is if you can't figure it out, probably not going to make it.
And the thing is, all right, the only thing you can do is try to put yourself into a position where if something happens, you're there to take advantage of it. And I will give you the exact example of this. I was in. Do you know who Tormented by Gnomes is?
Yes, I do. He runs your guys' D&D stuff, or another RP game. But I like him a lot, and I played in some of his games because I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan.
So when we're working on Overwatch League, getting started, I was in the broadcast.gg because I know you know who Musha Beef is.
Yes, I was. I actually did a little bit with broadcast.gg too. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm trying to remember when Jason and I started in OWL, Mushu had come down and talked to us because he was going to start this Discord for broadcasting purposes, and he wanted to get our input. So when he started that, I was in that Discord. In the first couple of weeks of doing Overwatch stuff, Tespa suddenly needed an observer. So I'm like, hey, I'll ask in this Discord. I go into Discord. Is there anyone in Discord? Is there anyone here who is in the general LA area who is able to be in LA in 3 hours to do this show? Gnomes was in there. And he had been doing stuff for years in Overwatch League. Not Overwatch League, but Overwatch scene, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't making any money off of it either. But he just ended up being at the right place at the right time. And it is unfortunately a large part of that is exactly that.
Yeah.
So
I 100% relate. Like, at least for me too, that was like that.
Scene you want to be in. Okay, here's the thing. One, you are never breaking into a scene that is established. No one new is breaking into CSGO.
I could name counter examples, but for the most part, I think that's a good general rule.
Yeah, like if you're trying to get into StarCraft now, it's not happening because the 8 people who are working in StarCraft have been working StarCraft for longer than you have known that StarCraft had existed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like you better find the next new thing that you can get started in and you can make. Like, that's how I got into Overwatch broadcasting, because I somehow got into the nice list of Blizzard to get into an early beta, and I was the only person who was not trying to who has actually came in there and was like, I'll do production for you, and not trying to be a caster at that point. That is the only reason that I am where I am. Mm-hmm. Now, I made myself, once I got into that point, I made, I tracked down the people who I needed to talk to, and that's where that Ben connection comes in. And like, literally, okay, let me tell you how much had to come together at the same point, at the same time for me to start this. How, like, all these points of luck had to happen, okay? Yeah. I had to be on Blizzard's nice list. And I think the reason why is because I had played World of Warcraft with a couple of Blizzard employees years before who put me on their friends and family list to get into like an early beta of like Wrath of the Lich King or something like that. And I think they never took me off. So because of that, I got into Overwatch beta phase 1. Right?
Yeah.
Then randomly, I happened to be invited by fucking Slasher to their broadcast thing because I had been asking teams, hey, I want to practice casting. Can I get into your scrim? And out of all the people who answered me, Mendo Kusai, otherwise known as Mendo, was like, hey, yeah, come on in. Use our teams. And because of that, I then, when Too Good was doing his end of beta phase 1 EU tournament, they let me do a clean feed observing for a couple of their matches. From that, I ended up being at a party during PAX South because I knew the guy who was running the party from Twitch, who ended up being a Twitch friend of mine from several years back, who had nothing to do with esports. Randomly, Fish Sticks was there at that party. And not randomly because he was working for Twitch.
He was working at Twitch.
He was going to be there. But so like I had to know somebody from Twitch. I had to know somebody from Overwatch for me to be at this party at this exact point in time and make sure that I found Ben there, who I'd never talked to in my life before, and go up to him and say, hey, I know that you've been doing Overwatch casting. Here's my card. I've done a couple of stuff for it. If you ever want somebody to do production for you, go ahead. I'm call me up. The amount of lines that had to reach this one fucking point to get here is insane.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's how you make it in esports.
Yeah. It's fairly accurate. I remember, like, for me, I was actually trying to break into League of Legends. And I was doing coaching stuff. And I had interviewed with teams. Like, I'd interviewed with CLG. I'd interviewed with Team Liquid. And I made it down to, like, their last one. I never got it either time. I'm a little bit salty. I've actually talked to the person who did get it over me because they eventually left, like very shortly afterwards, because I kind of got scapegoated, which I'm very grateful. Maybe I didn't get that job then. But no, it was like I went to Worlds in Chicago. I met a bunch of people who years later, like 2 or 3 years later, ended up like introducing me to someone who eventually ended up hiring me. That was it. It took a long time.
And I guarantee you that 75% of people who work in esports have a similar story of how they stumbled into it. Like, there's a lot of people who didn't even think that they would ever work in esports.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would ever work for Blizzard.
I mean, was that a dream come true? Was that like when you first?
No, I had zero. Like, I never even considered working for it. Like, it wasn't like, oh man, it'd be so awesome if I could work for Blizzard, right? Like, that was never. It was like, yeah, Blizzard exists. I like their games.
Okay. I mean, it was
surreal. It was surreal as fuck. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I have achieved my dream.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I imagine it's got to be interesting working for the company that you've enjoyed so many of their games, even if
it was like, it was the most surreal experience of that was you know who Nate Nanzer is, right?
Yes, I do.
Of course.
Yeah.
So it was very early, like game had just been released, and I had done observing for the Agents Rising Cup, which was the first LAN right after release held at Esports Arena in Santa Ana. And so I had done that. There was a few Blizzard people there, and Kiki, I think was her name, one of the community managers.
That sounds really familiar.
She had, I'd met her there and talked to him, whatever. And so she put me in touch with like the person who was going to be doing Overwatch stuff. Mm-hmm. It was fucking Nate Nanzer. This was before anybody had any idea who Nate Nanzer actually was, because nobody really knew about him. And so one of the most surreal experiences I ended up having was we'd been going back and forth of like, hey, we want to talk to you, when's a good time, blah, blah, blah. I was in a Dairy Queen parking lot getting a funnel cake with my roommate when I get a ping from Nate going, hey, do you have time to talk right now? And I'm just like, oh, fuck. And I'm like at least 20 minutes from home. And I'm like, can I do this on my phone? So I'm like, oh shit, I have my headset like with the little microphone in my car. I have an extra one for no reason in my car. Yeah, okay. So I'm talking to Nate Nanzer in a fucking Dairy Queen parking lot, and he's like, so what are your thoughts about the future of Overwatch observing? And like, it wasn't until later on when it had been Overwatch League had been announced, and it turns out that Nate Nanzer's the goddamn commissioner, when I'm like, oh shit, that's who I talked to in a Dairy Queen parking lot a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so that like there was, and he's eventually one of the guys who ends up hiring me for Blizzard. So there was a lot of like surreal experiences in that sense of I had no idea who these people were, and it was so much bigger than me that I just didn't, I had no concept of it. And that was part of working for Blizzard as well. It was like, all right, this is probably the only company that can make me move to LA, first of all, to do this very specific job. Because as I said, I spent my entire life trying to avoid from moving to LA, and I'm not gonna lie, I hated living there every minute of it.
Yeah.
But it was like, well, this is it, right? Like, this is my chance. This is
so that was the first time that, like, getting the offer from Blizzard, was that the moment where you said, okay, I'm doing this now?
So here's what happened. I was still working IT for San Jose State University. One of the best things about it, pay was shit because it's a state school. But one of the greatest things about it was the people there were so incredibly supportive, and they knew I had worked in broadcast, and they knew I had been doing, esportsy stuff here and there, that it was a passion of mine. And they were incredibly supportive. That is a corporate environment. It's a state school, but it is a very corporate environment. Yeah. And I was getting away with shit that you cannot get away with in a corporate environment because my bosses were incredibly supportive of what I wanted to do.
What kind of stuff were you getting away with?
Just leaving.
Okay.
For a week with no notice.
How did you not get fired? Any other job you get fired?
So here's literally what happened. The first 6-7 years there was really nothing, right? Like it was just whatever. Because I was doing Guns of Icarus and nobody worked in Guns of Icarus. Yeah. I left StarCraft. I thought I was out for a little while until I got into that, but that was a very much just like, there is no future in this. I'm doing this for fun. And I was doing a lot of Twitch broadcasting at that point. And then I was done with Guns of Icarus at that point. At that point, I thought I was out for good until Overwatch came out and did that. But anyway, so when the World Cups started happening, I suddenly got a call from Blizzard. Hey, we're doing these 3 shows in these 3 countries in the next 2 months. We need you in 2 weeks.
I'm happy they give you the timely response. And you're going to be
gone for 2 weeks.
Oh God.
Now, I went to my work. I had a lot of vacation occurred because I never took vacations, and I never took sick days because I usually wasn't sick. Like maybe I get sick for a few days here and there. So, every now and then I would use a sick day, just not go to work because sometimes you just need a day off, and it was easier to use a sick day.
Yep.
Look, you can look at me weird, guys, but everybody fucking does it. So don't even.
Yeah, I learned that skill in high school. Like sick days, my parents would be like, "Yeah, you can take the day off. You can use a sick day, but you have to get all your homework done and go ahead." Yeah, and I was like, "Okay." I learned very early on that you use sick days to take just regular days off.
Pretty much.
Yep.
As long as you didn't too often, you can be like, "I just feel like shit today. I don't want to come in," and my boss is like, "Cool," and. That was my boss was very laid back. He didn't give a shit what I was like. I was watching Twitch for 90% of the time I was at work. And he was just like, he didn't give a shit. Like, as long as things got done, he didn't care. Like, if things didn't get done, then we would have a problem, right? But as long as the work got done that was necessary, he knew that there was going to be downtime. And, I had to make it look like I was working. But in the meantime, I just set Twitch up.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, these kinds of calls started coming in where it was like, you're going to be gone for a while. And so, I went to my bosses and was like, hey, listen, I have this opportunity that I really want to do. I don't know if it leads anywhere, but, can I do this? And they're like, okay, so we're going to use up all your vacation time. We're going to use up all your sick days. And, it goes on there. And then the first set of that was done. And then like a little bit more came later on. And this was at a cross point for me where it was like, okay, so I'm doing some more watchy stuff. And this wasn't even World Cup yet. This was like doing Gamescom and, I think there was some PAX stuff in there, the other things. And so I finally came to a point where like, here's what's going on. Either this Overwatch thing takes off and I get into broadcast, or have been working the same job for 8 years. literally the same job, no advancement possibility here. I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing Windows certification stuff.
Yeah.
So I went and brought the fat Windows MCSC book. I started studying that. Literally right at that, as that started, is when One Nation of Gamers games started coming up and World Cup started coming up. And it was like, okay, well, we're going to put this to the side for now. But it was like, either I get a job doing this or I am done.
Yeah.
And I told this to my boss. It was like, okay, World Cup's coming up. I have no vacation. I have no sick days left. This is it. I do this. And after this, it's either I quit because I'm going to do that job, or I'm committing myself to working here and furthering my IT job. And that, and they agreed to that. They had no reason to. They literally, at any point in this, they could have been like, I'm sorry, you're going to be gone for 2 weeks, 1 week from now? No, that's not how this works.
That's unheard of.
For people who don't understand corporate environment, you generally have to tell your bosses when, like at the beginning of the year, when you're going to be gone at the end of the year. Yeah. It's January. Let us know when you're going to be taking a vacation in the summer.
Yeah.
That's how that works. And so the fact that they allowed me to do this is one of the greatest gifts that I've ever been given. Mm-hmm. And I'm forever grateful for the fact that they allowed me to do it, because otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to you.
That's true. That's true. You wouldn't.
And the thing is, I don't know how I would like my life. I honestly don't. I don't think I would be miserable, but I'm not sure I would be happy either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it was, for me, IT was a job. It was not a passion.
Yeah, you didn't feel as fulfilled doing it. That makes sense.
And I probably would have been left forever wondering what could have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very lucky to have that happen, to be able to do that.
So when did they make you a full-time offer? Like, when is it? Like, you've been doing all these different events. At what point do you get? All right,
here's the real fucking shitty part. World Cup ended, and then they fucking ghosted us for 8 months. And
hindsight, right now, I'm not.
Man, they had a listing out for observing for forever.
Really?
Yeah, they put out a listing on the Blizzard website because they think they're allowed to do so, and it was just silence.
Mm. So were you just not planning on doing any more broadcasts then?
Oh yeah, no, it was it. It was I either get hired for this or I'm done. Like, I have to drop it at that point and move on.
So you were just stuck doing IT stuff? Yep. Did you have those thoughts of like what am I gonna do? Like, was it this crossroad?
That was my point. I was like, I'm gonna start doing certification stuff because I have to do something to advance a career here.
Yeah.
But it was either I got hired by Blizzard for this, or I'm out of esports.
But they left you 8 months. Where you just? How far along in your certification were you?
I was studying for it. Okay. I bought a server to start messing around with Windows Server and learning that stuff. I hadn't taken any of the tests yet.
Yeah.
But it may not have been 8 months, but I think it was like 4 to 6 months or something.
And then do they just like randomly call you when I'm like, hey, Daniel, are you looking to get a job now?
Yeah, it was like in like July or August, and we started in October. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they finally reached out to me, like one of their recruiters.
Was it a moment of like ecstatic? Were you just like super happy, or was it like, why the fuck did you keep me holding for 6 months?
It was a little bit of both. Okay. Like, it was definitely an annoyance of like, and maybe it should have been a sign of things to come, but at that point it was just like, part of it is me knowing the corporate environment at that point, and shit moves slow.
Yeah.
You need approval upon approval, and then the person approving is gone for vacation for 2 weeks, and he's not going to get back, and they're going to need to take another month to take a look at this, and blah, 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 blah. He needs to go up the chain, then needs to go back down the chain, then he needs to go back up the chain, and then so much shit can happen, and it's annoying as fuck, but like, I at least understood why it could be happening.
Yeah.
Hoped that it wasn't wasn't going to be like, okay, this is not happening. Mm-hmm. And or I'm not getting hired.
Yeah.
That would have been worst thing. I was fairly certain I was going to get hired. If they were hiring, I was fairly certain I was going to get hired because I'd been doing everything, and now could they have eventually said no? Sure, we're going to take somebody else. Yeah, absolutely. But knowing everyone who was involved in that, it was just like, if they don't hire me, I don't know how this is going to fucking work for them. Because so I do not toot my horn. I don't think that I'm ever really anything special. I've never considered myself to be, really good at something. I think I'm good at a lot of things. Usually never consider myself to be really great at something.
Yeah.
I was the best free cam observer for Overwatch for at least 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was close.
Okay.
Other people passed me up eventually, sure. But by that time I was basically out of it anyway. After shit happened, I was just done with it. There were a lot of cool people doing cool stuff, but the way that free cam observing was done, this is the one thing that I'm going to claim.
That's fair.
That in my life that I was the best at.
Okay.
Now it's a very small sample size because there's not a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
But I was teaching people how to fucking do it. And if I'm teaching people how to do it, then that means I am better than them, at least at some point in time. So if they didn't hire me for that, I would have been like, you're a bunch of fucking retards. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use that word, but it's just like, I don't know what you're doing. Overwatch League is going to fucking fail. You obviously don't know how broadcast works.
So what did you got hired on as an observer then? Was that what your technical title was when you first got on?
Yep, or esports observer.
Esports observer. Okay, so you first get hired on that. I take it you're not excited.
And I knew who else was getting hired. I knew Jason was getting hired.
Yep.
And I knew at least one of the other guys was getting hired. A couple of the other guys I hadn't really worked with yet, so I didn't really know anything about them. But I knew the three of us that were getting hired. We had worked together before. So.
Oh, you'd worked with Jason before?
Yeah, so Jason and I worked together at the E-League.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Thing, yeah. And so that was and then the next time was at Overwatch League.
Okay, were you? No, I think
we did World Cup. We did World Cup as well. That's right. Before we got hired for Blizzard.
Yeah. So looking at Jason or Alchemist, you've talked pretty highly about him and SirScoots.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think they offer as far as working? Why do you enjoy working with them so much? Because even looking now at your job with Do Not Peek, I do believe there's a tweet out there that said you're so excited to work with them just because of the vast amount of experience that they hold. But what does that kind of look like on a day-to-day? What do you learn from them that you can't learn anywhere else?
I mean, a lot of it is intangibles, honestly. Mm-hmm. Jason and I, it's weird because Jason and I will fucking yell at each other.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. No, but during Overwatch League, we would get into shouting matches with each other about how we were doing stuff. But the great thing about that and we lived together, by the way. We lived in the same apartment. Because neither of us had enough money to that point.
No, LA is insanely expensive. It is insane. I would never want to willingly live to LA unless I was getting paid a lot of money, generally speaking.
Look, we were living in Sherman Oaks, which is like an upscale neighborhood as well.
I lived in Sherman Oaks too.
Yeah.
At the same time, we actually probably lived fairly close to each other.
I think it was Fulton. And Van Ness area, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'd have to look, to be honest, because I don't really remember. It's been a couple of years, so.
Yeah, same here. But anyway, but it was because we both cared a lot. And we both felt that we were, Overwatch was our baby. And this was ours, and we're going to do this as well as we could. And if we're not doing it as well as we could, we need to fix something because we need it to be the best as it can be. We really cared. But both of us also knew that this was our job, right? Like, if we're yelling at each other, it's not because we hate each other.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a part of what I believe was a part of the problem with our observer group dynamic, is that there were some people in that group who didn't understand that when Jason and I are yelling at each other, it's not because we don't get along and we hate each other. It's because we're just trying to make this the best as we can. And we both have very strong opinions about it.
Yeah.
But then we drive home together and we eat dinner, right? Like there's no animosity there. Yeah. And because of that, Jason and I get along really well. I think I'm a more articulate than Jason, and Jason realizes this. And so I ended up helping him write emails that he needed to send to important people. He was like, hey, take a look at this and make sure this is worded in a way that makes sense. I know what he's trying to say, and I'm able to write it out a little bit better. So we had this very good kind of symbiotic working relationship.
Okay.
And I mean, Scoots is just a fucking legend. Like he's forgotten more about broadcast than most people know, right? Like he's just been around for that long. And, obviously a part of this, me being here, is being like, hey, I have experience working under Scoots and Alchemist.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can put that on a resume in the future and it looks fucking great. I'm not going to lie. Like that is a selling point to me.
Yeah.
But you learn so many little things about not just the technical side, but about how to just put things together in a way that makes sense, in a way that flows. And if you can learn it from the people who invented how to do half of this shit, then why would you go anywhere else?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% can understand that. Looking at Overwatch League and everything that kind of happened, I know eventually you ended up making the book, right? Like the observing book. Was that something you did on your own? Was that something you just got asked to do?
No, that was a part of our job, is to do documentation.
That's a pretty big responsibility, though, if you're the one who's writing the thing that, hypothetically speaking, should have been used for seasons and seasons to come.
It was like, okay, we need a checklist, right? Like anytime, if we go on the road, we're doing a World Cup, these are all the settings that we need to check, and let's get it documented. Let's take screenshots. Let's get all the settings correctly. I was like the first person who, and this was my biggest pet peeve, the fucking network quality notifications. The moment I see an Overwatch broadcast with the network quality notifications on, I am enraged. Turn that fucking shit off. It is distracting and it has no reason to be on screen.
Yeah.
And that's in our checklist, right? Like we're trying to make this clean and as viewer friendly as possible. Let's eliminate things that don't need to be on there. That is number one on that list. We had a mantra. So before at some point we didn't need to do this anymore because Blizzard automated.
Yeah.
But it was every time there was a match, the mantra was chats off, health bars on. And everyone would say this so that nobody would forget it because you had to do this manually at the start of every fucking match.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that was important. And it was like, okay, let's get it documented. Let's get an entire, and it wasn't just like Overwatch setting. It was Windows settings. It was NVIDIA settings. It was everything just so that like, if there's anything wrong, the way that it was captured, okay, we need to make sure that this screen is the one that's duplicated to the output. But we need to make sure that the monitor is the primary display, not the capture, because if we do that, then the frame rates. So there's like this like very specific steps. If this is wrong, these are the settings you need to check.
Yeah.
And so, but that was an everybody doing this. So, like, sure, I may have written a lot of it, but it was formatted by, I think Gnomes did that. And it was put into a viewable PDF or Illustrator, I think, by one of the other observers, Michael. So while yes, I helped, like I was the one who, during one of the initial, we had like a boot camp for observers before the first World Cup, where a bunch of us got together, like, how do we observe Overwatch? Let's figure this out. And that's when, I led the charge in figuring out how to best utilize 2 free cam observers when we used the leapfrog method. And that was just the best way to do it when you had 2 observers. Now, if you have only 1 observer doing free cam, completely different thing. But for our purposes, this was the way it was going to be done to make sure that, because one of the biggest problems with doing free cam stuff when you have 2 people is both of the cameras just go to the same action, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now why do we have 2 cameras then?
Yeah. You only need one if they're going to do the same thing.
So the leapfrog method was literally, okay, every map, especially for escort stuff, I get this corner, you get the next corner. Okay, so now let's say Kings Row is the best example of this. The card starts moving and then it goes through that like thing, right? Okay, so I have this point over here. You have this corner over here. I never go to this corner. This is your corner. Yeah. My next, if the card has moved up far enough, I go here. If the action goes back here, I go here. You never fucking move from this point, right? And now when it's here, you move forward. So that's basically, it's very simple in a lot of ways, but it was incredibly important to figure that stuff out. And so, I've helped do that. But in the end, putting it into like in a written format, that was very much a collaborative effort. It wasn't just me typing it out. That was everyone working on it.
That makes sense. Looking at, are you still there? Your internet your internet might have frozen there for a second.
Yep. Hopefully I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. We look good.
I need to restart my camera. Okay.
I think you're good. It looks like it's bad. Looking at being in Blizzard, it's got to be a hugely bittersweet or sweet bitter kind of experience. Like looking at the end, when everything kind of finished out, did you know that you were going to be laid off, or was it just random? And was it laid off by association? Is it much the same thing that, do you have any idea why? Because it doesn't make any sense to me that when Alchemist got laid off, or when like some of the observers, because I don't think you two were the only ones. There was a bunch of people who got laid off.
It was just, from observing crew, it was just me and Jason.
Was it? Okay, well, that sounds pretty personal. I'm not going to lie. From the outside looking in, that looks pretty personal. So was it just one day, hey, you're done?
Literally 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't know. There's someone like literally 2 to 3 weeks before we got laid off. I had asked our boss, hey, I know our contracts are ending because we're temporary workers on a year contract.
Yep.
Do we need to sign anything? What's going on? And he said, yeah. Let me check that out. We get called into his office and hey, you're gone. We are not to renew. We didn't get fired. We got our contracts not renewed.
Yeah.
And no response as to why. I have a few theories. I will not say them because I have absolutely no basis for what it actually is. But I don't have any fucking clue why. Mm-hmm. When it comes down to it, I've never been told. And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
It was.
What's that moment like then? Is it like shock? Is it disbelief? Is it like, what the fuck am I going to do? What's that moment like? Like, did you have any plan?
Literally all of it. And one of the biggest things that sucked is that I didn't have enough time to learn anything else. Like nobody gives a fuck if you're an observer or we're watching any of the game.
Yeah.
Like you're an Overwatch observer. Have you done PUBG? No, you're not getting hired. That's how it is in observing. If you haven't worked in the game, like they don't care how much transferable skill you think you have. If you haven't done it, you're not getting work there.
Yeah.
Generally, there's exceptions, of course, which is how I ended up doing Fortnite stuff. But that's, it was all of it.
So what do you do right afterwards? Is the first thing I'm getting the fuck out of LA? Is that the first thing?
Well, I no, because at that point I was like, well, everything's here esports wise, so I can't move anywhere else and be in a better position. And it didn't help that my lease was up, and Jason was like, well, I'm gone. Bye. Yeah, I have a month to find a new fucking place, which, by the way, you need to find a new place to live. Everything is basically a year lease because nobody does month to month in LA.
Yep.
Oh, and guess who doesn't like renting out places? When you don't have a job.
Yeah.
So, there was definitely that worry there, but it was like, okay, all right, this is garbage. I just got fucked. Fuck Blizzard. They don't understand what they're doing. So to finish that side off, what I think is going on with Blizzard is people who have no idea about broadcast got put in charge of broadcast.
Okay.
Team 4, who's the people who built Overwatch, are some of the smartest fucking people I've ever met. They are just geniuses, and they are better than their job than probably anyone else in the industry. And they are amazing people, and I loved working with them. They have no fucking clue how broadcast is run. And they were in charge of broadcast.
Okay.
And here was the base underlying problem in all this. Jason and I get hired. Hey, you're the experts at Overwatch observing and broadcast. Help us build this. Oh, by the way, we're going to tell you what to do every single turn. You must do this. You must do this because we want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not going to be looking good for broadcast. We can't use that. No, you have to use it.
That kind of takes away the point of hiring someone.
Well, then we're going to fire you. Like, wait, what? I thought we were coming here as our own like independent unit to make this as best as you can. I didn't realize that just because you built a tool to do a thing, I have to use it if we don't think it works.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we directly work for you. Cool. All right. Which one of you 6 people do we listen to? Because you can't agree upon yourself. One person says we need more free cam. Other person says we need more first person cam. Who are we listening to? I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't really work out very well. I guess that's corporate environment in a nutshell, isn't it?
I mean, partially, but I'd hope that they weren't going to be like that. And I, this is, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm just saying that like to me, it became pretty evident that they were just selling Overwatch League as a name, and nobody really gave a shit about what it looked like except the people who got fired.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And it was I have a feeling, it might be not because, but I have a feeling that the fact that Jason and I routinely pushed back against stuff that we didn't think was going to work is why we got let go, because it was easier for them to have a bunch of button pushing yes men than it was to deal with people who were going to be like, hey, we can't. No.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Can I say that's a specific reason? Of course not, because I have no idea.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
I think there are other factors as well, but I firmly believe that the fact that we were definitely, we probably became known as the ones that were hard to work with because we oftentimes pushed back about stuff they didn't want to do, or they wanted to do, and we didn't. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so then after it was a lot of. Initially it was like, okay, I worked for a year at Blizzard at least. Something's got to come up, right? And it was a couple of things that looked like I had a good chance. I had an interview with a couple of places, and things were looking okay. I was still getting a little bit of Overwatch work here and there because there were the Immortals hired me to do a couple of events. I was doing like the California Cup, so there was still some of it, and then it just fucking stopped. Like New Year rolled out and it was gone. There was not a goddamn thing.
Yeah. So what do you do? What
you sit in your own filth and you feel sorry for yourself.
Did you think it was over? Did you think the esports
spiral into a deep depression, and you take a look at what mix of alcohol and pills would kill you the fastest?
Okay, that's depressing.
I'm not kidding you in this, by the way.
Was there a point where you thought about
literally hit rock bottom?
Was there a point where you thought about, I'm done dealing with this life?
I was at the point where I'm done dealing with life. Like, at that point, look at me. I'm 30. I was 36.
Yeah.
I left a profession which I could have done stuff in and didn't want to go back to, into a profession that I really wanted to do, but it was suddenly slammed on me. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife. I'm getting older and older. What the fuck am I doing? Like and now I don't even have work to like just take my mind off anything, right? Like now you're sitting in your own goddamn filth and your inner demons, and just like that's all you have all day.
How do you pull yourself out then? Like, where does the never-ending cycle eventually stop? Like, is there a moment where like how did you get out of it?
So here, if you were doing a TV show or you're writing a book, this is where you have like, and then came the epiphany.
But
right?
real life doesn't work like that. We both know that.
That didn't happen. Yeah. Two things happened. Weirdly, it's gonna be funny to say. VR chat happened. I have no social life in LA. I didn't know anybody. I couldn't talk to anybody. I didn't go out anywhere. I had no money to do anything with. One day I downloaded VR chat and I hopped in, and that let me take my mind off things. And I was just doing stupid shit and talking to people suddenly again. And I didn't even think about it at that point, but I think that weirdly that really helped. Yeah. Two, NG, who is now owned by Esports Engine, I believe, called me and said, "Hey, you want to do some observing for us for a game?" And so thankfully I started getting work to do it in Fortnite. I never played Fortnite. I'm not a big fan of Fortnite, but I like doing observing stuff, and I like working cameras, and I like the people there. It wasn't the best pay, but it was pay.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to be picky when you don't have you don't have any pay, so I can understand that. So it was a lot of it was kind of luck.
In a sense, doing all the observing stuff helped me get there, because at least I had something to show for it, and I picked up how to do stuff in Fortnite fairly quickly. By the way, Fortnite observing tools are probably some of the best observing tools in games. Their camera system is actually fucking insane.
I actually really like watching competitive Fortnite. Like, I think it's...
I think it's a fucking dumpster fire.
I mean, it's not my favorite game.
But it's not just... I think battle royales are a fucking dumpster fire. There's no way to show them off. We did the best as I think we could, but it is a thankless job, and it is not a good viewing experience. And literally not just Fortnite. I don't think battle royales in general are a good viewing experience.
Okay.
But I really, really like what Epic did with their observing toolkit. Mm-hmm. The kind of shit that you could do in there was amazing. Really? I ended up working a lot on their editing team, where their lead up to the Fortnite World Cup, we would go through replays and record highlights for like winners. And we just did some really, like, you could zoom in, you could change focal lengths, we could have a lot of fun with making little stories and like do different patches of drone cameras and all this shit. Focused, and that was awesome. Like, it was just super fun doing it.
Oh, it's really cool. So you started doing Fortnite events. Before that, was it basically the dream's dead? Is that the idea? Is like I'm never going to work in esports again?
I mean, partially. It was definitely like, I lost the break.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and where can I possibly go from here? Because there is nothing bigger.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I like when my contract didn't get renewed with Gladiators. I felt the same way, and I think a lot of me was also very, like, my first experience with esports, I wouldn't say was particularly good. Like, I was very jaded for a while afterwards, and I feel like you were probably also jaded, just because like some of the things that happened. And
the word triggered.
Yes.
People toss it around, and I didn't understand what that word meant until I watched Overwatch season 2, and I suddenly understood what that word meant.
Did you force yourself to watch it all season 2? Like how much? Like is there?
No. I watched maybe like the first week.
Okay.
But I had to unfollow people because I had spent the better part of 3 years living in Overwatch space, and all of my half of my Twitter contacts were Overwatch based.
Yeah.
And my life just revolved around it. And suddenly there is every time I see it mentioned, there is I'm having a panic attack.
Yeah,
and I watched the first week to see what they were doing and saw that it was garbage. And there were a couple of clips that were just this is basic shit, y'all. There's a very specific clip that I remember where it was, was it Bumper, who I think was one of the tanks in season 2?
Yes.
So Doa calls out, Bumper has this earth shatter. He's gonna try to draw. It was Dorado. It was the second point of Dorado, and he's fucking sitting on one of those high grounds, and he's ready to drop down. And Doa is calling this out, and even if you don't know what you're doing, if you're listening to the casters, at the very least, you should find Bumper right now. Fucking find him and get him on screen. I don't care what you're doing. You're getting Bumper on screen because we are talking about it.
Yeah.
And it was, the free cam was over there somewhere and then flew around a little bit. And of course, the next fight goes down exactly how Doa laid it out. And we saw literally none of it. And that was the moment where I was just oh my God. This is absolute trash. They don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They literally have no idea. Now, they got very lucky about the fact that season 2 is basically all goats, and that is literally the easiest meta to ever observe because it is just this the entire time, and there's no mercy meta. There's no Tracer and Genji going in the backlines. It was just fucking this all the time. But that first week, I just watched it and this is fucking trash, and everything I worked for is gone.
Yeah.
That's gotta hurt. And it was literally triggering. And I had to mute keywords. I had to unfollow casters. I had to unfollow mutuals of people who I really liked. I just couldn't even see the word Overwatch League.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I want to ask you, when you got out of Overwatch League, was there a lot of support for you, or was it basically as soon as you're out, you're no longer here, you're no longer relevant?
Initially, there was a huge flood of support of what are they doing? I can't believe it. Get this guy a job. And then within a month, nobody even said anything.
Yeah. Does that hurt?
I mean, it's cool to see it, but I can't blame anybody for it, right? I'm glad people cared. I would have liked to have gotten a job out of it. I don't. It was one of those things where I'm not going to blame anybody for it. Okay. So it's not like I was bitter towards everyone. I was bitter towards one specific set of people, but everyone else who is just I know what that feels like. It sucks. I hope you're going to be fine. That's great. Unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere, but that's about it. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of reach out in the first couple of weeks, and then that might as well not exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just media in general, right? People remember things very short term, and then they suddenly look away. So you're doing, I'm assuming, a lot of freelance observing for a while after this. At what point do you get called up to join Do Not Peak?
So Jason had been talking about it for a while, and there's a very convoluted story about how they get started, and I'm not entirely sure how much of it I'm allowed to share, so I'm not going to share most of it.
That's fair.
But I had known that Jason was working on a project here and there. I knew that Scott was involved. I knew that it was a possibility as early as March of 2019.
Yeah.
And I knew that Jason wanted me in there if it happened. Maybe it was even earlier than that I knew about it, but somewhere around there. But I didn't know that I was going to have an actual position there until, I don't know, maybe August, September, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So when you get the call up, are you just like sure, 100%, not even a question?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. There's no question. Like if they offered me a job that was at all in the range of a, pay that I could live off of, yeah, no, it was literally a no-brainer.
Okay, so what exactly does I believe your title is production specialist?
Oh, by the way, the one other thing that happened during then, because I actually ended up working with Jason on Blast Pro CSGO.
That's right, you did.
Stuff
the Blast stuff. Yep, I remember that. And you did some different jobs, and you weren't just doing observing for the Blast stuff.
I was assistant director.
Yeah, assistant director.
Which is a very, very, very fancy title for glorified timekeeper.
Okay, I mean that's what I've heard is that ADs are basically.
It is incredibly important,
yes.
But literally you're just a timekeeper.
Yeah. I mean, was it interesting doing this different role? Does it show you that you want to do different roles besides observing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And because I knew observing is a dead end, by the way. Like anybody who wants to be an observer, I'm sorry, it is a dead end job. It is a lot of fun.
Find a new job to move into.
No. Here's the thing: do it, but do not ever think that's gonna be your end game.
Yeah.
Learn everything else. That is your foothold into knowing other things. I'd never AD'd before. We kind of fudged that over a little bit, but Jason knew how I worked and that I could pick it up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we didn't mention it to the people who were hiring, but Jason wanted me there and they trusted Jason. And so I got there and I was like, I have no idea what this is going on, but all right, let's go. I have 2 days to learn this. Let's figure this shit out. So, in that sense, and I picked it up fairly quickly and I did end up I did like 4 events for them, flying around and that was cool. That was fun. I think that was really when it was just like, okay, I have stabilized and I'm getting flown to Madrid and doing this show in Moscow and all that shit. So, jet setting around the world again.
Yeah, and so then you get the offer for Do Not Peak.
So yeah, then I get the offer for Do Not Peak. That's in September of last year. Moving out to Phoenix.
You must have been grateful, like just the rent difference. It's got to be something grateful.
Let me give you the rent difference. So in LA, I was in a let's just say a little bit of a more questionable neighborhood, a little bit of like a Mexican ghetto type of deal, but not like gang ghetto, just like lower class working family type of deal, right? I'm on a main street. I'm living in a studio apartment. It is a sizable studio apartment with the kitchen is, a separate room. And it's big, nice, big kitchen, decent, nice big kitchen. The bathroom is, down a hall.
Yeah.
It is still on a main street. The walls are pretty thin. It's definitely a little bit older. $1,400.
Oh, that's actually more than what I pay for my place right now in Florida. And I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath garage and a backyard.
So I'm currently in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with the garage, $1,400.
Yep. About the same thing. Yeah. God, it's not worth it. In my opinion, like the only reason I would ever move to LA is because of esports and my friends. Like the only reason I would never move to LA other than that. So
well, and it like driving anywhere in LA, like going anywhere in LA is impossible unless you want to spend 3 hours doing it.
Yeah,
I lived, Sherman Oaks is what 20 miles from Santa Monica Beach.
Yeah, that's a long drive. It's an hour.
Yeah, if you're fucking lucky. I would have loved to be able to go out to Santa Monica Beach on a regular basis. Everyone complains
about the driving in LA. I didn't notice that badly. Maybe it was the times that I drove though. Maybe I always got lucky and like I was.
I mean, possibly. I just knew the few times that I tried to go there, I was like, okay, cool. This is a 2-hour drive. Awesome.
Yeah.
We needed to go down from Burbank area to Irvine.
That's a long drive.
Hey, cool. Have fun. 2.5 hours each way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't live in LA just in general. Probably wouldn't do it.
Because it was fun to like, oh, you live in LA? You must go to all this cool stuff. No. I'm not leaving my fucking house.
I don't think people realize how much observers work, or like in production. Like, it is actually insane the hours that you guys do. You guys do very, very long days.
It was usually 10, 11 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe more. But between when we get there, warming up, making sure everything's working. We always were doing, because the thing is, as observers for Blizzard, it wasn't just doing observing. We're doing all the documentation. We were helping them test stuff constantly. New builds coming out. We would go into player rooms, the team dugouts, and sit there and watch games and take notes and see what teams are doing, so that we would be better prepared for upcoming matches. Except
for ours, because we didn't let anyone in. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We wouldn't let anyone in.
So here's the thing: Overwatch Season 1, right? The two teams that let us in on a regular basis were the Shock and the Mayhem. The two worst teams, other than Shanghai, were the Shock and the Mayhem. So it was like, I think we were at the Gladiator room like once.
I would be very surprised. Based on
we talked to DP a couple of times. I think maybe we were there once. I don't remember. Honestly,
if anything, it was only once. Because I think
it would maybe once. But like none of the Korean teams would let us in. No fucking way. They wouldn't even allow us to sit in to matches like online. Like not even just being inside of the room, just like being in their scrims. They wouldn't.
Someone asked us one time, and I'm pretty sure we were very reluctant to do it. Like there was a lot of convincing.
Why?
I didn't care. I didn't care. Okay, let me clarify. I didn't care because much the same reason I was like, I don't really think that they're going to steal from us and tell our competitors.
Like literally, all we're trying to do is trying to make it that you look better on screen.
I know that, but the thought process was that what if they like these other teams better and they steal some of our ideas or let slip to another, which doesn't make any sense to me, but. I'm also not. I don't think everyone's up to like screw me over.
For other teams, so like, I mean, it was. I mean, I get it in some ways, but another way is like, oh, for fuck's sake, guys.
Understandable. So, do not peak. I don't know how much your title means, but what does a production specialist do? Because I actually don't know what that even really means.
So it's a nebulous term kind of on purpose because I do a little bit of everything and there's no, there's nothing that encompasses everything that I do. And so that was just like, Jason was like, well, what about production specialist? I'm like, okay, sure. Sounds good. But I mean, that literally meant, I was gathering and making graphics. I was gathering and making video. I was helping write stuff. I was helping do run of shows. On show days, I was doing more D work. Sometimes I would be doing EVS work. Okay. Sometimes I would be helping run the graphics engine. So it's literally just a term for doing everything, a little bit of everything. And that's kind of held to into COVID times now where like the shows that we're running were being run out of my bedroom, out of this fucking room right here.
Yeah.
Where Balanting is basically just directed by me in that sense. And I help Ian, who's our producer for it, he gets most of the stuff together and I make them fit into vMix and run the shows.
So I don't know how much I can ask you about Do Not Peak in general, but like, what are the goals for the company? Because I don't know if I've ever really seen like, what is the end goal for Do Not Peak?
Just generally make good and cool shit. Okay. Right? Like part of the reason why I got started is because they really liked the studio that we got into, where it was a super cool graphics engine and we could do things in esports that nobody was doing because it is, everybody just runs their web shows.
Yeah.
I know that for Scott, he hated the fact that we had to go running back to doing a web show because of COVID. Like that was the thing that they, as far as I know, they didn't really want to do.
Yeah,
like they wanted to be like high value, good production.
Yeah.
Right. And eventually maybe game studios would look at that and go, oh shit, we want to do a launch for a game title. Hey, let's go. And they have this big studio with this cool shit that we can integrate with, let's go do that. You know, a lot of that stuff got waylaid because of COVID, and we've had to adjust to it, just like every other company has had to adjust to COVID times. You know, when any of that is going to stop, I don't know. You know, I know there's, you know, we don't want to get sick, and we don't want to get anyone else sick.
Yeah.
And so I think from Scott's and Jason's perspective, you know, they're willing to let shit happen and play out before we force ourselves to do things we wouldn't feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
But you know, what that means in the future right now, I don't particularly know. You know, I trust that they will lead the company in ways that make sense. I'm not a business person, and you know, I know Jason doesn't like being a business person, but he's kind of forced to be a business person in this sense. But I mean, it's their vision, right? And it's their baby. And my job is to help the things that they envision get made and done. Right. Like I'm here to support the things that they want to do. And if that means tomorrow we're going to be shooting diaper commercials, then tomorrow we're going to be shooting diaper commercials. We're not shooting diaper commercials. Don't worry. But my point is that like, you know, if they decide that we need to pivot to something, that, you know, my job is going to be to make sure that we do that as best as we can. Whatever they might show up to be. And, you know, what I had really hoped for is that I would be able to, you know, be in a control room and learn, you know, how to work a switcher well and how to run EVS machines well and all that. But of course, now that got kind of like, oh, cool, we're not in the studio currently for the next X months because, you know, COVID. Now, you know, is it possible that we're going to get back in the studio and if somebody calls us? Absolutely. I'm sure that that's a thought that they have. I honestly have no idea if, you know, anybody wants to white label us, but, you know, if somebody does that, I'm sure they'd be willing to jump at that opportunity. But, you know, I'd really hope that I would be able to do that the way that I wasn't able to do that in Overwatch League, is to learn all these other positions. And, you know, if 5 years from now, I get a better opportunity somewhere else from that because of that's amazing. But if, you know, this company keeps on going and growing and we make cool shit, I'm more than happy to stay here. And I really hope that I get the chance to learn all of that stuff in the future still. Looking at COVID, does that, it must terrify you, right? Like, especially being like the job was supposed to be maybe in studio, but now you're stuck doing all of this web content, which I don't know how you guys classify, like, is a success or not, whether compared like to the original goal, but you're not going to be doing a lot of in-studio stuff. Does that scare you that maybe there's a time limit if we don't start to do this stuff, that like budgets happen or cuts? I guess partially, like, there is that definite fear of, hey, it's a startup. Yeah, you know, at any point startups can fold. And this is, right? I will say, for being a startup, like COVID, because I talked to Ben about this too. Being a startup right now is, for at least Juked, was actually terrifying. Like, this is not a good time to be a startup if you're going to be a startup. And you have Juked that started up, you had DNP who started up, and it just seems like it would be terrifying. Well, I mean, one of the things you've heard in the past, I don't know how long we've been going, is that I've had a lot of opportunities that have popped up and gotten snatched away. That's what I'm saying. Is like, and so that fear is in me 100% of the time. And I mean, I think we're stable. I hope we're stable. We've been told that we're stable. I trust that Scott and Jason aren't, you know, yanking my chain around. Yeah, I don't think they would do that. I don't think so either. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to work here, is because I knew that they would not fucking bullshit me. Then if some shit's going bad, if I'm doing something wrong, then they will let me know so that I can fix it, because I hate when you're doing something wrong and nobody tells you, and then you get fired for it, or, you know, your relationship ends because of it. Right. So, you know, I trust that they will keep us in the loop of anything in the future that happens because of that. But yes, no, that fear is absolutely there. But at the same time, I am so incredibly lucky to have gotten this job when I did, because if I was still doing, and here's the funny thing, right as I got this job is when my freelancing stuff was actually picking up. I was getting work from Blast. I'd been getting contacted by MLG to do stuff. There were opportunities that were suddenly opening for me finally.
Yeah.
But as I said, I value stability a lot.
Yeah.
And so for me, a regular paycheck sounded great. And working with Scott and Jason sounded great. And now I'm super thankful I took it, because if I didn't, I probably would have been making more money overall. But suddenly in February and March of this year, I would have started to look, and every single job gone. Yep. And I was terrified for all of my freelance friends because I knew that they were fucked.
Yeah.
Now, weirdly, for people who do production, it's actually kind of also been a boom, because suddenly everyone wants to run a home production. So if you know how to run a home production in esports, you are actually right now, all right, you're asking how to get into esports? Learn vMix. Become a vMix master, and I guarantee you right now, you will be getting jobs on a regular fucking basis in anything you want, because everyone is running that shit from home currently. So weirdly, it would have been eventually good because everyone wants to do things anyway. But like that was definitely one of those things where like, oh shit, I am so glad I have this job, and I'm so glad that we haven't gotten furloughed or any of that stuff, that I'm able to continue making a regular living. And we've had to figure out what we're going to do, sure, but man, it is just like a load off my shoulders that I don't have to think about that.
Yeah. Looking at Do Not Peak, how do you guys rate success of the products that you're coming out there with?
I think for us, it's mostly, are we happy with what we're doing? We'd love, everyone wants numbers to be higher, of course. Yeah. But I think that for us, as long as we feel that we are putting our best foot forward and we're doing things in a way that makes sense and looks good, we are comfortable with what we're making.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, from a money-making standpoint, I have no idea, because as I said, I'm not a business person. I don't know, I'm not an analytics guy. I don't know about the spreadsheets or whatever. Right. So I will let Scott and Jason worry about that. I would love for Valoranting to be getting thousands of viewers every week. I think it should be in a lot of ways. I think we have the cast constantly with big names enough to do that. And I think we have the production value to be able to do that. Why is it not happening? I don't know. Maybe people don't care. Maybe we haven't gotten enough views. Maybe not enough people know about it. Maybe Valorant is too early to really have a esports focused show.
Do you guys have someone who does SEO and marketing for you guys?
No, not at the moment. No.
Okay.
I think like it's, there's definitely people who, here's the thing. If we did not reach COVID, we would have those people, I'm pretty sure by now. Yeah. But it suddenly was like, okay, well, we might just stay with this small group right now because, I know that one of the things that Scott and Jason didn't want to do is they don't want to hire remote people. Like if you're going to work in Do Not Peak, you are moving to Arizona.
Yeah.
Like that's all it is. And part of that is because like, it's so much better to work with people who you are in the same office with and can walk down the hall and be like, hey, we need to talk about X thing. Mm-hmm. And so I know that that was one of our requirements when we're looking at social media people at the beginning of the year is like, you need to be able to move to Arizona. Like you need to relocate. That was it for me as well. Like myself and Ian, okay, you need to be here. We're not going to fly you out. I'm sure at some point we'll hire those kinds of people. I had no idea.
I was curious, because I've doing YouTube. I'm pretty sure that the amount of value that goes into SEO and the marketing side is actually huge. Like the more I've learned about it, that and I'm not good at it. Like I will be the first to admit that I'm not. Like those people have a unique mind because it's like an art and science. It's weird. So, but that was one of the things I was like, well, I would probably be the first thing that I would guess, assuming that everything else is good. Then that's where you get into, oh, hey, it's probably this that's happening. Are you gonna do more freelance stuff? Are you looking to? Is that the goal eventually is to do that, or do you want to? Are you looking at making ideally, if DNP could just be a permanent forever thing, would you just stay there? Because I know you were very loyal to your other company for 8 years, even though you never got a promotion or anything like that. So you don't seem to be driven necessarily by this wanting to get to a higher statute or anything like that.
Well, so and part of it was loyalty, but part of it was just like I was comfortable.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't making much, but I was comfortable. It would have been cool to have more, but I didn't need it.
Yeah.
And it was a job that allowed me, as I said, the main reason I liked that job, one, the people I worked with were great and, supportive, but two, it was a job where I started, I ended, and that was it. There was no it was it. Like I did my 8 hours and then I had my rest of the day, which was really good. But would I love to be at a same place for 15 years? Absolutely. I'm under no sort of illusion that is, a probability. There's a very good chance that, 5 years from now, I will get an opportunity that it just makes sense to take. Mm-hmm. Even if DMP keeps going, that's just the way that life works. And a lot of times, there are people who stay with a company for 25 years and there's people who jump from job to job every 3 years.
Yeah.
Would I be fine with either of those? Sure. I hate moving. I've moved since I left my parents' house about 20 years ago. I have moved on an average about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Every single time.
I moved a lot. It's annoying.
Yeah. I hate doing it. So would I love to be in the same place here for the next 15, 20 years? Absolutely. But, I also know that, there's a chance that I might get an opportunity somewhere else and I've learned enough and they want to give me some, big, title or something like that. And I'm sure that at that point, Scott and Jason would be happy for me as well. Right. Like it's, they may give me some shit, but, we know that, they want to see people succeed as much as they want to see the company succeed.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Would you ever consider another big tournament organizer? Like after the way Blizzard treated you, like if Riot reached out to you, would you consider it? Or I don't know, something like that? 'Cause I've heard horror stories about like Riot too. So
it depends on the company, of course. It'd be hilarious if like Blizzard called me again at some point. I know that's never going to happen.
Would you work for them again?
No. Depends on who it was with.
Okay.
If it's the same people who are there now, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because I can't trust them.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't have anything against working for companies. Mm-hmm. I do like the fact that I am not like, there's a lot more creative freedom here, right? Because we're not under the watchful eye of shareholders.
Yeah.
I think that's not just Overwatch League, but Blizzard in general. It's a fucking garbage company now. It used to be the holy grail of games companies. Now it's literally all, how much money have you made for them? And literally it's like, if you tell them that you're going to spend $1 to make $5, but suddenly you had to spend $2 to make $5, it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's the problem with how Activision Blizzard has gone. It's literally all how much money have you made for the investors versus how much you said you're going to make for the investors. And I think that's led into a lot of problems with, a lot of the downsizing that's happened, not just with Overwatch League, but in Blizzard in general, has been solely profit driven shit. And that's not how Blizzard used to operate, but it is now. And it is gone down the shitter hard in the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Before anybody knew. And I mean, we've all heard the horror stories about people getting underpaid and, the garbage way they treat their Q&A testers and all this other dumb shit. I don't remember the original question.
You're good. You answered it. So we've been here a long time, Daniel. I enjoyed this. I hope you did. I have one question for you that's left. And it's arguably the hardest question that I will have asked you this entire time. Having had the experience being on this show, hopefully it's very unique from other things that you've watched or been on. Having had the experience, if you could see anyone to be on the show, who would you like to see? And if you pick someone who I've had, I'll let you know.
I think having Mushu on here would be actually pretty cool. I don't know if you've had him on.
I have not yet.
Also, let's see, Necra, I think, would probably give you a good story.
Nice. I like Necra.
I was thinking about this earlier. There's a third person. I cannot for the life of me.
Third person, he doesn't remember you.
Jesus Christ. I just Moosh, Necra, and... Shit. All right. I will message you if I remember it, but it just totally flew from my mind. But I think Mushu would be a pretty interesting one because he was in a lot of the business side of it. And I think he'd probably give you a good interview about how, especially about how BGG came together and operated and, where it's gone in the years that it's operated.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that has been all the questions that I have for you, Daniel. At this time, if you want to shout us or anything like that, you're more than welcome to have them. Otherwise, I'll close out the show.
Like, subscribe, and comment. No, thanks for having me. As you can tell, I love talking and I love telling stories.
That's okay. I like hearing stories.
It's one of my favorite things. So, I'm glad you were able to bear with me as I rambled on for a while.
It was good. You did fine.
If anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, feel free to do so. It's just imagine42_. You will see a lot of food.
Food is good. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate it. For everyone out there, this has been The Minds of Media. My name is Blake Panashevs. I hope you enjoyed this interview. And until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Oh, hello there. I hope you enjoyed this video, so please make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Shout out to all my Patreons who support me. If you're looking to support me, you can find my Patreon at patreon.com/improvblake. You can also find me streaming throughout the week at twitch.tv/improvblake.